Welcome everybody to AFSO21 Radio. You're listening to the Weekend Wrap-Up.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Weekend Wrap-Up here on AFSO21 Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Ferrara. And folks, this week we're gonna highlight some things that the NFPA recently announced that they're doing, and that is, as you can see on the screen here, NFPA 1700 Guide to Structural Firefighting Training. Now you're probably wondering, what the heck is this? What training we already follow? Training standards out there. Well, as you can see below it, it says, explore the sections below to learn the basics. Sorry about that, folks. I got my pager turned on today. We had a few calls today. But it's back to the NFPA 1700 here. It's saying, explore the sections below to learn the basics of modern firefighting, fire dynamics, and explore how to approach fire scenes in interactive, fully 3D environments. Now, NFPA is doing a really great job taking firefighter training, putting it into a computer form, interactive, home-based, self-paced training, to where firefighters, no matter where you're at, you can go ahead and take various types of training. But we're focusing on NFPA 1700 today, and I consider myself a veteran in the fire service. I've been doing it for 33 years. Started out, those heard me here in the podcast before. I've started out, back in 1988, 33 years, volunteer firefighter. Then I went in the military twice, actually. Completed 20 years total service as a firefighter, working my way up the chain of command. And now that I've retired, I'm back here in PA, back in the volunteer fire service. But, throughout my career, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that, we take initial training. You look at firefighter 1, firefighter 2, whatever it may be. We get that initial baseline training. And oftentimes we put that to the back burner. We're like, oh, I've already learn that. I know about it. I don't need to, to rehash it, go back over it again. Well, that's from taking this course, going through, looking at the actual NFPA standard, the hard copy standard, and now this online training. I think what NFPA is trying to do here is get us back to basics, get firefighters back to basics of firefighting. And you see in here, underneath the title there, the basics of modern firefighting and fire dynamics. For those that have gone through the firefighter 1, firefighter 2, your initial fire training, you learn about fire dynamics. But again, a lot of us, I think we put that to the wayside. I'm not saying, we deem ourselves so smart that, oh, that's beneath us. It's just that we get so wrapped up in other firefighting tasks, other firefighting tactics, strategies, learning, knowledge, whatever you want to call it, that we often forget about the back to basics. And it's great to see the NFPA doing this, because one of my former fire chiefs, that was his goal. He saw the same thing. Firefighters, they were more focused on the neat stuff, the more advanced stuff, but they couldn't do the basics. And he kept foot stomping, preaching, whatever you want to call it, that, look, if you want to go to these, classes, if you want to do the cool stuff, you got to know the basics. We often hear the saying, oh, you got to crawl before you can walk. And I think, again, going back to the NFPA, I think that's what they're doing here with 1700. At least that's how I perceive it, is that, we're going to get you back to crawling before we can walk. And, like I said, I think they do, from what I've seen so far, they've done a really great job with this. So, you go into any firehouse, you ask the old guys in there, the old chiefs, some of the veterans, folks that have been there for a while. and I even say it, in its simplest form, firefighting, the task of fighting fire, in its simplest form is putting the wet stuff on the red stuff. But it goes beyond that, and that's what NFPA 1700 is focusing on, is that it's not just stretching a hose line, catching a hydrant, pulling up to the house, stretching a hose line, and putting the wet stuff on the red stuff. There's a lot more involved in that, and even the public doesn't see this. They're like, oh, come on, guys, why aren't you putting, getting that hose line in there and putting the fire out? Well, there's a lot of things that occur before that water hits that fire, or you make entry into that structure. And again, this is structural firefighting training. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here over the course of this podcast and on YouTube, and hopefully you get a sense of what NFPA is saying. Hopefully you partake. Sorry, folks, my phone's ringing, and let me turn my ringer down real quick so we're not interrupted here. And I hope you get a sense of what NFPA is talking about, that you partake in this training and you get something from it. That's the end goal of any type of training, is that you get something from the training. You get a takeaway. It's not just a waste of time. And so far, hats off to NFPA. I don't see this as a waste of time. I think it's a really great tool, a resource to put in our firefighter toolbox of knowledge, information we can resort back to. So, the essentials, like I said, we do firefighter 1, we do firefighter 2, and that's your basics, your essentials. This is usually where firefighters will first hear about fire dynamics, the basics of firefighting, how fire, the dynamics of fire, the dynamics of smoke, ventilation, yada yada yada. So but at the end of the day, do these firefighters fully comprehend the science behind firefighting? And really, firefighting, like I said, we've the service itself, the fire service itself, has evolved from bucket brigades, stretching hose lines, manual pumps. Then we get into the steam pumps, and we know all of that. But over time, it's no longer putting the wet stuff on the red stuff. It's becoming science. And I often joke is that, we're firefighters, we're not scientists. But when you look at 1700, it sort of snaps you back into reality. It's like, yeah, in a way we are scientists, because we have to evaluate what is occurring when we roll up on scene. We get a visual of what is that smoke doing? What is the color of that smoke? What's that fire doing? What stage is that fire in? If we do this, what's going to happen? If we don't do this, what's going to happen? So again, it's we've seen the videos with other agencies out there when they do fire testing, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to show you here. We're able to go ahead and scroll through and show you some of the content in here. But yeah, I mean, you really, at the end of the day, you have to become firefighter/scientist. And I'm not saying have a PhD in fire dynamics, but at least have a basic understand of it, and know, even the rookie, you should be able to stand there in the curbside, get a quick visual of what's going on, and make an informed, educated decision as to what you need to or what you don't need to do. So in 2015, getting back to 1700 itself here, excuse me, in 2015, a project request was submitted to the NFPA, and upon the creation of a technical committee. Now, those familiar with NFPA standards, every standard has a technical committee, a group of experts, industry experts, fire service experts, that sit down and discuss what should be or shouldn't be in these standards. So they created this technical committee on fundamentals of fire control within a structure utilizing fire dynamics. And like I said, in 2015, that occurred, and hence NFPA 1700 was born. So when you go through the actual standard, the hard copy standard itself, and you can find this on NFPA. You go to their free editions. It's free to sign up. I encourage every firefighter to do that. Some folks, some departments, they love the hard copy, the hard paper copy. That's great. I'm not knocking NFPA, but it is expensive if you want to be able to print those, download them, put them on your shelf. But then when they come out with a free edition, it's great if you just want to go ahead and look up something real quick. I do it a lot with, here in the podcast and, as a consultant, if I need to research something, it's just a lot easier to pull it up, look at the free edition, reference it, jot down some notes, and then go from there. So in the hard copy standard, it states, NFPA states 1700 is, quote, first NFPA document connecting fire dynamics research and its application to strategy, tactics, and best practices for firefighters in controlling fires within a structure, end quote. And then it goes on to say, quote, the focus of the document, and again, we're talking about the hard copy document, NFPA 1700, quote, the focus of the document is to provide guidance to individuals and organizations on interacting within a structure on fire with proven approaches based on documented fire investigations, research, and fire dynamic testing to achieve the most successful outcome, end quote. So you see what NFPA, and again, the NFPA does a really great job. Those folks that are on the technical committees, I applaud them for what they do. We've come a long, long way since NFPA was born. Standards have come out. And again, you heard me say in there to provide guidance. Remember, folks, NFPA is not law. It sort of becomes law when an authority having jurisdiction adopts the standard and has some type of enforcement attached to it. Okay, so for example, you get a local township, they adopt NFPA standards, and let's just use the life safety code for example. So local township adopts NFPA standards, applying the life safety code. They find some, quote, violations, if you will, or deviations from the NFPA standard. Well, if they have an ordinance in place, or if they have some type of what's the word here I'm looking for? Yeah, I'm drawing a blank, folks, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So if they create an ordinance and say, hey, you violated NFPA 1 life safety code, or 101, or 1001 for firefighters, or whatever standard that they've adopted. If you violate that, then this is what's going to happen. It could be a fine, or whatever. NFPA will not do that. Again, these are just guidance. They put it out there. It's entirely up to you. The authority having jurisdiction to adopt that and then apply it and then enforce it as you see fit. So, I think across the country here in the United States, a lot of authority having jurisdictions, townships, municipalities, fire departments are jumping on board with NFPA and adopting it. There for a while, and even here in central Pennsylvania, there is still some pushback with adopting NFPA standards, because once you do, again, that municipality, not saying they're obligated, but they're sort of encouraged to create some type of enforcement penalty if you deviate from that. There's still a lot of confusion by municipalities as to what NFPA really means, but that's where it comes back to education, training and education. Inform them. I've reached out to NFPA. They are more than happy to reach out to municipalities, townships, boroughs, cities, whatever size they are, local government, excuse me, and educate them on what NFPA does and does not do, to get that better relationship, that better understanding, so informed, educated decisions whether to adopt or not adopt can be made. So going back to NFPA 1700 here, like I said, along with a hard copy of the new guidelines, this free training NFPA announced a few months ago, that this free online training program for individuals to complete, that hopefully will help them better understand NFPA 1700's purpose. So as you go through, when we scroll down here, if you're looking at the screen here, you see you got fire dynamics. That's where I'm at right now. Just going back through the course again a couple times. Strategy, tactics. Well, let's see if we can get back to. Let's go to the home screen. So right here, you see, a lot has changed in the 50 years. Has your department? That's a valid question in the fire service. A lot of things. When they say a lot has changed in 50 years. Let's just go down here and we'll expand. That's the biggest thing. Anytime you hear the word change within the fire service, it's like voodoo. It's like, oh no, it's what's going to happen. We're gonna ruffle feathers. We're gonna disrupt the harmony within the organization. Change is coming. Often folks say, hey, change is not a good thing in a fire service. I tend to disagree. Now, some things that change in the fire service I've seen are not beneficial or not healthy in the fire service, but the majority is. You've heard me talk about change in PPE, turnout gear, tactics, strategies. The overall way that we do things, education. That's a positive change. So then you look at equipment. Our trucks have changed. We've gone from the bucket brigade to where we are today. We've got amazing equipment, aerial apparatus. Back in Ben Franklin's days, with the volunteers, they could never have imagined what we have in today's fire service. But you look at, you just scrolling down through here, like I said, you got technology, the fire environment, a summary of structural fire dynamics research, the pace of change. It's one thing. You look at another thing here, the modern versus legacy homes. That's something that's been a big change in the fire service, is that we've gone from traditional building materials, mostly wood back in the day, wood frame construction, your solid 2x4s, 2x6, all that stuff, to now we have lightweight construction. We have composite materials. So things that way have really changed, that affects the fire dynamics, how we operate, exterior and interior during a structure fire. So these are just a few, just at the beginning here, these are a few things that NFPA 1700 is wanting to address that, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, it's often overlooked. It's like I said, with the what has changed over 50 years. We get it. We get with the building construction changes. We get it with technology. One thing that I keep harping on is attitudes. Attitudes in the fire service really have to change, and it sort of goes with NFPA 1700 here. You look at leadership. Often, like I said, the older chiefs, some of the veteran firefighters that have been around for a while, they're like, nope, we're happy. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Leadership is reluctant to change, but we still have to ask why. why the resistance to change when we know through research? And as you saw, at the main page of this online training is that, in the statements in the hard copy, research, connecting fire dynamics research and its application to strategy. This isn't the technical committee didn't just sit down one day and say, okay, this is what we're going to put into NFPA 1700. They've done their research. They've pulled massive amounts of data, the videos. I mean, there's and it's not just NFPA. It's other organizations out there that are doing this research, and then it all gets compiled. It all gets analyzed. It all gets broken down into what is going to be the most effective in NFPA 1700. Because there's a lot of research out there. You can get lost in it. It's overwhelming, but again, NFPA, I think they did a really great job in breaking this down into its basic form. That the rookies, from rookie to fire chief, can really comprehend on this. So, it's, again, for those that are interested in this training, hopefully you're going to find the information effective, and it's going to cause you to think back to the basics. I know it did for me. Like I said, I'm guilty of it. I get so tied up into advanced technology, advanced this, advanced that we often forget the basics. We gotta keep that on the stovetop. We got to keep it simmering, and always go back to that. Because again, you got to crawl before you can walk, and before you can run. And a lot of times, think about this next time you roll out on an emergency. Often firefighters, you arrive on the scene of a fire, and instinctively, we put our blinders on. I've done it. I've caught myself doing it. We see the smoke, we see the fire. It's like a moth to a flame. But we don't take the few seconds. We don't take some time to pause and analyze what that smoke and fire is doing. Like I said before, you got to look at the amount. You got to look at the color of the smoke. Look at the wind direction. Look at openings. The natural versus man-made ventilation. What's going on with that incident before you step inside, because you want to try to minimize risk before you get inside that structure. And by doing an exterior assessment, 360 size up, you can do that. Once you make entry into the structure, if conditions allow, you should be able to give a size up inside and report that back. So again, hopefully this training is going to encourage participants to change your mentality to focus on the overall picture. Again, suggesting participants perform a scene size up themselves, either physically or mentally. Because, oftentimes, I'll hear on the radio dispatch, across the country, because you can do that now. You can jump online and you can listen to radio dispatch from really around the world. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the first arriving unit, they show up and they don't give a proper scene size up. It's just like, oh, unit so-and-so is on scene. Okay, what do you got? You've got units coming in, additional units coming in. What do you got? I'm not saying, do a Tom Clancy, get an in-depth scene size up. But, that's something, if you're the first unit on scene, and you don't have, you may or may not have a line officer on scene yet. First unit on scene should be given a size up, established command. That's your basics of incident command. So when that line officer does show up, now you have something to report to that individual. Additionally, should an investigation occur during, as a result of this fire, you have the mental picture, a mental visual picture of what you saw when you showed up. Oh, we had smoke, light smoke coming out of side A, front door, right window. And then from the back, we had dark smoke, heavy dark smoke showing with fire extending out the rear up the side of the building to the second floor. It's things like that really you need to, like I said, you don't have to take a notebook, you don't have to jot down notes, but at least have something to pass on to that line officer or whoever is going to establish command for the duration of the incident. Because otherwise they're walking in and they're going to give a size up as to what they see at that time. So they don't know, oh, well, this fire progressed, this smoke progressed, it intensified between the time the first arriving unit showed up to the time they got on scene. Again, that goes back to your fire dynamics. Knowing the change of smoke, fire between a certain amount of time, they can immediately assess. Oh, is this building getting ready to flash over? Has it already flashed over? What's going on? So you see where I'm going with this, and at least I hope you do, because that's really what NFPA 1700 is trying to instill. Is that you have to be aware of these things. It's again, the 360 size up. You've heard me talk about that. You've heard a lot of other firefighters out there talk about that on their podcasts and webinars. Don't just curbside and give a visual, because what you may not see in the front could be something completely different in the back, and we've seen videos of that actually happen. So again, we're not rocket scientists, folks, but we are, unfortunately, it could be a good thing, becoming basic scientists in terms of recognizing fire dynamics and understanding how to deal with those dynamics. And again, it's you have to know these dynamics, because a lot of your tasks associated with firefighting are going to be based on these dynamics. Initial, and then throughout the incident until that fire is completely extinguished. You have to know the dynamics of that entire incident. So, in the big thing, I hope those that are listening, you've got your incident commander standing outside or in a command post, maybe inside a rig. They can't see what's going on inside the structure. And when I just talked about, once you do make entry into the structure, if conditions allow you to go ahead and convey smoke conditions, hopefully you should be able to convey fire conditions in there. You need to report that back to the incident commander. Don't just go to the front door and say, command, engine, blah, 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 is making entry with 3. Okay, that's great. I've got 3 firefighters that are making entry. But now what? What's going on once they get in there? Okay. Hopefully everybody's got a radio. You've heard me talk about this before. Every firefighter inside should have a radio. If not, whoever is holding a radio, it could be a line officer. Who knows? Hopefully it's if they're talking on the radio, hopefully it's not the nozzleman. But somebody on that line should be giving a size up as the crews are progressing forward, as they're extinguishing the fire. Just give a quick brief size up of what you got inside. The incident commander can go ahead and jot that down, make a mental note of it, and apply that to his or her overall scene assessment, focusing on the fire dynamics. Okay, they've got these conditions inside. What do I do? What decisions do I base what are my next decisions going to be based off of what I just heard on the radio. Okay. So again, NFPA is doing a great job focusing on this. So, I really don't want to get too in depth with this. We could talk about this a lot. We could really pick it apart. I don't think we need to. I encourage you to check out NFPA 1700, the hard copy. Like I said, I'm going to have links to all of this on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. Take it upon yourselves to look at this. It's when you do take the training, I think you have about 6 months to complete it. So again, it's self-paced. It's not something you got to knock out right away. Also, what I found is when I signed up for this is that a department can actually sign up for this. So you have your primary register or registry, or registrant, however you want to call it. You have that person that signs up, but then you can sign up additional individuals within the organization, which is great. So if you want, you could literally sit down and have a training class on this over a few days, to where everybody gets the training. You log in, if you're logging in as that primary registrant, and then as you go through, as long as everybody's in attendance, everybody's going to get credit for this. So, it's a win-win. So, again, NFPA is doing an outstanding job. Again, I think this is a really important resource tool to put in that toolbox that we have, that mental toolbox for firefighting. And, use it to your advantage. So, like I said, I completed my firefighter 1 and 2 training back in 91 when I went through Chanute Air Force Base, the DoD Fire Academy. That's when I actually got a firefighter 1 and 2 training. Now I took some other firefighting classes here in Pennsylvania, got certifications for those, but the actual NFPA firefighter 1 and 2, I didn't get that until 91. And like I said, don't think for a second that throughout my career, I'm looking over here at my library. I've got a lot of reference materials that I try to resort back to or refer back to for guidance on that. People ask me questions all the time. I'm like, there's just so much stuff out there. I'm like, let me get back to you. I go to my hard copies. I go online. Always have your nose in a book, scrolling through the internet. There's always something out there to learn. I encourage you to do that. NFPA is a great start. IFSTA manuals are another great start out there. Again, those I was blessed to serve on a few committees out there. Similar to NFPA, you have a technical committee. IFSTA, they do the same thing. You have a technical committee, sits down, goes through the manuals, and determines what should be put out there, published for firefighters to use as a reference, as a guidance. IFSTA is not law, NFPA is not law. That's up to your local government to establish ordinances, laws based on these references or industry standards. So, like I said, I'm just going through my notes here. Again, this is an absolutely free course that NFPA puts on. How often do you see or hear that with fire training? Often there's a fee, incurred in there. But NFPA 1700 online course is absolutely free. If you go to their website, NFPA 1700, look up the guideline. That's free on the free editions. Again, it's free to sign up. So I encourage every firefighter out there to do that. So, I was going to read through how to get to it, but I'm just going to go ahead and put the links in there. It's a lot easier in the podcast description and on the YouTube description. So look for those. You'll just scroll down, click on that link. It'll take you right to either the standard page or the training registry page. So So with that, I want to go to, hopefully I can do this. Let's see if it works. Nope, it's not going to work, folks. We're just going to scroll back up here to NFPA 1700. There is on scene. Remember how we talked about before? We haven't done this in a little while. A couple segments out there. We got the on scene segment. So, folks, just the other day here, New York up in Queens, Jackson Heights, they had a massive fire up there, an 8-alarm fire to be exact. 21 folks were injured, including 16 firefighters, 5 residents. This fire, it's just unbelievable, the size and resources that were dispatched to this. So unfortunately, this fire resulted in about 200 occupants to seek shelter. I mean, it was a huge apartment complex. You Google it, you're going to see the pictures up there. I had a picture of it up here, but unfortunately, it is not. It's not coming up for some reason here, and I apologize for those that are watching on YouTube. But it was originally dispatched as a 4-alarm fire, and then the situation intensified pretty rapidly, and it ultimately demanded 400 FDNY firefighters and 130 units to respond. So again, excuse me, scratching my nose here. Again, going back to NFPA 1700, the fire dynamics, okay? The incident commanders, personnel on scene, leaders in charge took into consideration fire dynamics of that incident and ultimately said, hey, we need more personnel, we need more manpower, we need more units to respond in order to go ahead and protect lives and property. So you see how this is tying together a little bit. Of the firefighters, news reports are saying 2 of the firefighters suffered non-life-threatening burns and were taken to Cornell Burn Center for treatment. We haven't heard what the status is on those. Thoughts and prayers to those firefighters, everybody that was injured at that fire. Hopefully everybody gets a full recovery from that. This fire could have been worse than what it was. So, I come from a rural area here in central Pennsylvania, and when I hear 400 firefighters and 130 units were dispatched to this apartment fire, within one city block up there, I can't comprehend that number of personnel on scene here in central Pennsylvania. Now we have some large facilities here. But most of them are your mid-sized, small residential, the typical rural community. I just can't imagine having 400 firefighters and 130 units on scene to a fire here. If that was the case, we're looking at city blocks, plural, being involved in that. Whereas, here in FDNY, that's one apartment complex. So, great job to the crews up there at FDNY, for what they did. Saved the building. No fatalities, fortunately, on that. So great job on not only getting everybody out of the building, but getting a good hit on that. I think they may still be on scene, investigating up there as well. So again, speedy recovery to those that were injured from that fire. So then we have shout out. Again, that was another segment that we wanted to introduce. We haven't done so in a while. That's on me. I just haven't reached out. I haven't scrolled or trolled the internet to find some shout outs out there. So before we get started, folks, if you're watching and listening, if you want me here at the Weekend Wrap Up to recognize somebody, give a shout out to them, please send their name, send their organization to podcast@AFSO21.com. email me here at podcast@AFSO21.com. I will be more than happy to go ahead and give somebody a shout out that's out there that's doing great things. So this episode shout out goes to Fire Station 25 at Camp Blanding in Clay County, Florida. And last April, now they've had this in place for a year, but Fire Station 25 took one of their engines and wrapped it to honor the men and women who serve in the Florida National Guard. Now, Clay County is a huge military supportive community down there. So this department, they actually wrapped the apparatus. And one side, it's got a camouflage pattern. And again, I had a photo up here. Unfortunately, it's not popping up like I was hoping. But they took the apparatus, wrapped it in a military camouflage pattern, and it's got the words right, ready, relevant on each side. And what's pretty cool about this is that on one side it's got a fighter jet, and on the other side it's got a helicopter on there. So they're paying respect. They're supporting the military folks within their community and overall. And that's just how the fire department, the fire service down there just wanted to show their gratitude for what the military, the veterans are doing. So hats off to Fire Station 25 located at Camp Blanding in Clay County, Florida. And we also want to thank the residents of Clay County, Florida for their continued support to the nation's men and women serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. So again, shout out to those folks down there. So folks, as we start wrapping up here, we're not going to take the full hour this week. We're going to keep it a little bit brief. But I want to ask you, please be sure to subscribe to our Facebook page and especially our YouTube channel. So look for the little fire symbol down in the corner. Hover over that. Click subscribe. We'd love to see those numbers jump up. As you know, FeedSpot has us ranked number 6, for fire and safety podcasts out there. Our goal is to get to number 1 by the end of this year. So with your help, by subscribing, by liking, I think we're going to go ahead and get there, folks. And of course, on whatever podcast channel you're listening to, we're on, Spotify, we're on iHeartRadio, We're on a lot of them out there. I think they keep adding some every week. We get picked up on. So however you're listening to us or watching us, please, folks, give us a like, give us a subscribe, share us out. The more listeners we have, the more information we can get out to the fire service, because that's really what my goal is to get information out to those men and women in the fire emergency services. So what's coming up next? I'm looking over here at my battle board. I've got about half a dozen or so amazing guests lined up to be on the podcast. I'm not going to say too much, but there's some big names that are going to be coming up here over the next few episodes. So be sure to tune in, listen in for these upcoming episodes. And, it's, as always, if you have a question, comment, concern, good or bad, we'll take feedback however it is. Email us here. Message us, on the AFSO21 Radio, the Weekend Wrap-Up Facebook page. Send us a message. Or email me here at podcast@AFSO21.com. That's PODCAST at AFSO21.com. Be more than happy to go ahead and respond back to you. If I don't have the answer, folks, I'm going to reach out and get you an answer. And it's like I said, good or bad. I've been getting hit a lot with military firefighters dealing with the PFAS blood issue. I've got a researcher coming up that's really knowledgeable about PFAS. She's going to be on the podcast here within the next couple episodes, so make sure you tune in for that. And as always, If you or you know somebody that wants to be a guest here on the AFSO21 Radio, the Weekend Wrap-Up podcast, send us their names. We said before, if you want to give a shout-out to somebody, or if you want to be a guest, I would love to go ahead and highlight, have a department organization here on the podcast and share what they're doing for the fire service community and their local community. So if you are interested in that or know somebody that may be interested, again, send me an email to podcast@afso21.com. So folks, just going through my notes, I think that's going to do it for this episode here on AFSO21 Radio, the Weekend Wrap-Up. Just to recap, like I said, you see up there on the screen, Introduction to NFPA 1700, Guide for Structural Firefighting Training. Be sure to check that out. I'm going to have the links, like I said, in the descriptions. Check those out. Get familiar with it. Let's get back to basics. Let's crawl before we walk and run. So ultimately, it makes us a better emergency responder, professional development, and contributor to our local community. So with that, folks, that's going to do it for this episode here in the Weekend Wrap-Up. Stay tuned. Keep listening for a brief message from our sponsor, Fire Department Coffee, and our parent company, AFSO21 Consulting. Thanks a lot, folks. Have a great rest of your day, great week, and as always, stay safe and continue supporting your local fire emergency services. That's it. We're out of here.
Firefighters work long shifts. That's the nature of the job. If your station is like most, coffee is what keeps you going. That's why you should check out Fire Department Coffee. Veteran owned and run by firefighters, Fire Department Coffee offers a wide variety of delicious coffee, including their signature line of spirit-infused coffee, all roasted by hand and delivered right to your door. Even better, 10% of net proceeds from every sale goes to benefit wounded, ill, or injured firefighters and other first responders. And they've got a special deal for the Weekend Wrap-Up listeners. Enter discount code AFSO21, that's AFSO21 at checkout to get 10% off your next order at Fire Department Coffee. FireDepartmentCoffee.com, that's FireDePTCoffee.com.
Veteran-owned and operated AFSO21 Agile Fire Service Organization for the 21st century applies their extensive background in fire protection and emergency services to deliver support with identifying, developing, implementing, and maintaining strategies and techniques essential to operate and sustain an emergency response organization. AFSO21 services include staffing analysis, risk assessment, standards of cover, training, management, and financial reviews. AFSO21 is prepared to support your organization with increasing your capabilities values. For more information, please go to AFSO21.com. That's AFSO21.com.